What happens when a prince finally loses control in public? When the composed, polished figure the world has admired for decades suddenly shouts, mid-stage, "Leave me alone." And the woman beside him, the one he married, reacts in a way that sends shockwaves across the globe? That exact moment unfolded at a charity concert that was supposed to celebrate generosity, unity, and hope. Instead, it became a vivid display of tension, frustration, and raw emotion, a moment that no one present, and certainly no one watching from afar, would ever forget. The scene was electric. Lights danced across the stage, reflecting off polished instruments and shimmering gowns, capturing the energy of a crowd eagerly awaiting a night of entertainment and inspiration. Prince Harry, dressed in a sleek, tailored suit, stepped forward to deliver what was supposed to be an uplifting speech, a reminder of the charity's mission and the lives touched by their work. Cheers erupted, flashes of cameras lit up the arena, and for a brief moment, it felt as though the world outside had melted away, leaving only the brilliance of the evening and the prince himself. And then, she appeared. Meghan Markle, radiant in a designer dress, smiled at the crowd, but her eyes were fixed on him, not with admiration alone, but with a palpable intensity that immediately altered the energy in the room. Observers would later describe it as a force, magnetic and intrusive, pulling Harry away from the carefully crafted moment he had prepared for. It wasn't just a simple gesture. It was a claim of attention, an assertion of presence that the world had never witnessed on this scale. By now, the cameras were rolling, but nothing could have captured the storm that was about to unfold. Meghan moved closer, stepping into Harry's personal space as he prepared to address the audience. At first, it seemed innocent, almost playful. But the air shifted. Harry's smile faltered, a subtle tightening in his jaw signaling discomfort. He had endured public scrutiny before, relentless paparazzi flashes, invasive questions, and endless speculation. But this was different. This was happening in real time, on stage, with thousands of eyes on him. And then it happened. Meghan reached out, her hand brushing his arm, then gripping him in a moment that would become the defining image of the night. Harry froze. The audience noticed a flicker of tension. Whispers started to ripple through the crowd. Fans, reporters, and even performers paused mid-motion, sensing something had shifted from celebratory to unsettling. What followed next, his sharp and unmistakable voice ringing across the hall, would ignite debates, memes, and viral clips around the world. "Leave me alone," he yelled, a command that was both shocking and heartbreaking, a public revelation of private frustration. The question that immediately comes to mind is, what drove Harry to reach such a public breaking point? Was this an isolated incident, a spontaneous eruption of stress and irritation, or was it the culmination of ongoing struggles behind closed doors? Insiders suggest the latter. They describe patterns, repeated moments where Harry found himself caught between love, duty, and an ever-increasing desire for autonomy. Meghan's public charm, once celebrated, had reportedly begun to carry undertones of control, attention-seeking, and emotional pressure. And tonight, under the bright stage lights, it all collided in a single, unforgettable moment. But the story doesn't begin on the stage, nor with that fateful grip. To understand the magnitude of this incident, we must rewind to the hours leading up to the concert. Harry arrived early, meticulously reviewing his notes, rehearsing the speech, and coordinating with event organizers to ensure everything went smoothly. Every step, every word, was measured and intentional, an effort to maintain the dignity and poise expected of a prince. Meanwhile, Meghan, anxious to participate, hovered near the edges, offering suggestions, second-guessing the order of events, and repeatedly interrupting briefings with her own ideas. Observers later described her as both vibrant and overbearing, a combination that, in a high-pressure environment, left Harry visibly unsettled. It's easy to underestimate the psychological strain of such an event. For Harry, every smile, every word, every gesture had been scrutinized for decades. Every action carried the weight of expectation, from the royal family, the public, and now, the media magnifying even the smallest misstep into a global spectacle. And yet, Despite these pressures, he had prepared meticulously to make this evening a success. What he did not anticipate was that the person closest to him, the one he trusted implicitly, would become the source of an immediate, public challenge to his composure. Meanwhile, Meghan's behavior, while subtle to some, was impossible for those near Harry to ignore. She whispered instructions, leaned into his space, and appeared to direct his attention toward her, rather than the audience or the charity cause itself. One aide later recounted a moment of silent alarm, noticing Harry's fingers clenching the podium just slightly, a tiny signal of growing tension. It was in these micro-moments that the foundation for the on-stage eruption was laid. What might seem trivial to an outsider, a touch, a gesture, a suggestion, can, when compounded over hours and under the glare of thousands, become unbearable. And then, the climax. As Harry began his speech, Meghan's hand moved toward him, a gesture that would be described later by witnesses as both affectionate and insistent. He reacted immediately, his voice cutting across the music and applause. "Leave me alone." The words stunned the audience, shocked the staff, and sent a ripple across social media almost instantaneously. Clips of the moment spread like wildfire, accompanied by speculative commentary and dramatic headlines. Was Harry angry, humiliated, exhausted? Or had he finally reached a limit that even the weight of his royal upbringing could not contain? The psychological layers behind this eruption are as compelling as the public spectacle itself. Harry's identity, long tied to service, duty, and familial expectation, was now juxtaposed against personal desires, a need for autonomy, and the pressures of a relationship under constant scrutiny. Meghan, ambitious and media-savvy, has been described as someone who thrives on visibility, recognition, and influence. In isolation, these traits might seem compatible. Together, under the glare of cameras and the expectations of monarchy, they created a combustible dynamic. Even the smallest details, often unnoticed by the general public, contributed to the tension. The way Meghan adjusted Harry's microphone moments before his speech, the whispered comments about lighting or camera angles, the subtle, repeated interruptions during rehearsals. All these actions, compounded by the stress of a live audience and the pressure to deliver a perfect moment, acted as catalysts. Harry's outburst was not just a reaction to a single event. It was the culmination of hours, perhaps years, of small but accumulating frustrations. And yet, while the world fixates on the stage moment, the real drama was unfolding elsewhere, backstage, in whispered conversations, and in private reactions that would later be revealed by insiders. Staff were left scrambling, unsure whether to intervene, while aides debated the ethics of reporting on royal tensions that had now become public. What if the night that promised to be a highlight of philanthropy turned into the most uncomfortable evening of Prince Harry's public life? That's exactly how the charity concert began, with the air thick with anticipation, glamour, and an undercurrent of tension that few in attendance noticed at first. The stage was set in a grand venue, one of those places where chandeliers glimmer like diamonds and every surface gleams as though reflecting the importance of the event itself. The audience was a mixture of celebrities, philanthropists, royal enthusiasts, and press, the perfect storm of eyes, cameras, and expectations. Harry arrived early, as he always does for public events. Punctual, poised, his suit perfectly tailored, his demeanor calm but subtly tense. He was meticulous in his preparation, rehearsing the key points of his speech, practicing pauses, nods, and hand gestures, ensuring each word landed with the right balance of sincerity and charisma. Every detail mattered. Every second mattered. And yet, despite his careful preparation, a storm was quietly brewing, one that he hadn't anticipated. Meghan had arrived moments after him. She stepped into the venue with that unmistakable air of confidence and attention-commanding presence, her smile dazzling yet carrying an intensity that could unsettle even the most seasoned public figure. To outsiders, it might have looked like charm, but insiders knew that every step, every word, every look carried weight, sometimes supportive, sometimes challenging. She whispered to staff, offered helpful suggestions, and lingered near Harry's side, projecting involvement, but also subtly asserting influence over the flow of the event. Observers described the contrast perfectly. Harry, trying to anchor the event with careful control. Meghan, inserting her energy into every space, shifting the room's rhythm. There were tiny moments that hinted at friction. A nod not returned. A gentle correction from Meghan on the placement of a microphone. A repeated suggestion that Harry adjust his speech notes, even though they had already been finalized. Each instance seemed trivial, but for Harry, accustomed to both protocol and control, the cumulative effect was significant. Have you ever felt the weight of someone's presence in a way that makes concentration impossible? That's what he was experiencing. The rehearsal itself was a study in contradiction. Harry would speak, perfectly timed and articulate, only for Meghan to lean in with a comment, a smile, or a subtle hand gesture that drew attention back to her. Some aides attempted to intervene discreetly, but with cameras rolling and guests arriving, every interaction was amplified, every correction magnified. Harry, polite and patient, attempted to manage both the audience's expectations and his wife's constant input. The tension built silently, like a pressure cooker being heated beneath the calm surface of royal decorum. Meanwhile, the event staff, those who had worked years in high-profile environments, sensed the subtle tension immediately. One assistant later described noticing Harry's jaw tighten slightly as Meghan moved into his space. Another recalled the fleeting moment when he glanced toward her with an expression that suggested both surprise and a quiet plea for space. These micro-expressions are easy to miss on television or in photos, but they carry volumes in the theater of live events. And those who were closest to him backstage were acutely aware. Something was simmering, and it was only a matter of time before it boiled over. The audience, unaware of these subtle undercurrents, settled in. Glasses clinked, conversations faded, and the orchestra began tuning. The energy was palpable, expectant, celebratory, perhaps even naive to the private drama about to unfold. Harry's moment was coming. And yet, Meghan's energy, a mix of excitement, anxiety, and insistence, threatened to upend his careful orchestration. She moved toward him as he approached the podium, and in that split second, a ripple of anticipation passed through the room. It wasn't fear, exactly. It was curiosity, an unspoken sense that something different was about to occur. As the spotlight found Harry, highlighting his poised stance, Meghan followed closely, her gaze locked onto him. It was a dance of attention and proximity, subtle but powerful. Have you ever seen someone so close to a person in a public setting that their presence almost feels like it dominates the space? That's what happened. Harry, trained to maintain composure under scrutiny, felt it immediately. The tug of influence, the distraction, the subtle pressure. For years, he had managed public appearances with military precision. Yet suddenly, the one person he trusted implicitly became the variable he could not control. And then came the first public micro-interaction that would set everything in motion. Meghan leaned in, smiling, whispering a suggestion about the order of his speech, a suggestion he hadn't requested. He paused, an almost imperceptible hesitation, then nodded politely. The audience heard nothing. The cameras captured nothing. But in that moment, the stage became a battlefield of patience, control, and emotional endurance. Each second added weight. Each movement amplified the tension. A musician nearby noted the change in energy as Harry adjusted his notes mid-rehearsal. A photographer described a subtle shift in posture. Harry slightly turned toward Meghan, an attempt to politely acknowledge her input while maintaining authority over the stage. The microdynamics were fascinating, a silent struggle playing out in body language, tone, and timing. It was both intimate and public, personal and performative. And for those watching closely, it hinted at the imminent eruption. The crowd's chatter began to fade as the lights dimmed further, signaling the start of the performance portion of the evening. The orchestra played a soft introduction, and Harry prepared to step forward, ready to deliver his lines. But Meghan's presence lingered, close enough to whisper, close enough to influence, close enough to disrupt. Every rehearsal moment, every backstage conversation, had led to this precise configuration, and Harry knew deep down, that maintaining composure would require extraordinary effort. Some aides later reflected on the anxiety that filled the backstage area. They noted subtle glances exchanged between staff, a silent acknowledgement of tension that could not be addressed openly. In the midst of grandeur and celebration, a quiet drama was unfolding, invisible to the majority but palpably felt by those involved. It's a reminder of how public appearances can conceal private storms, until, inevitably, the storm finds its way to the surface. And then the cue came. Harry stepped into the spotlight. Applause filled the room, and all eyes turned to him. This was the moment he had prepared for, a moment of poise, control, and public duty. Yet, as he reached the podium, Meghan followed, her presence like a shadow across the polished stage. He could feel it. He could sense it. He was about to deliver a message of hope, of philanthropy, of inspiration. Yet every instinct screamed that control was slipping, that the stage was no longer entirely his own. And that's when the first touch occurred. A hand brushed his arm. A whisper reached his ear. A gentle yet insistent pressure reminded him that this was no longer just his moment. The room, bathed in light and expectation, became charged with tension. What happens when personal boundaries are crossed in the brightest spotlight imaginable? When the world expects decorum, poise, and control, and suddenly, raw emotion erupts. That's exactly what happened the moment Meghan Markle stepped closer to Prince Harry on stage during the charity concert. A moment that would instantly become the defining image of the evening, shared across millions of screens worldwide. Harry had just begun his carefully rehearsed speech. His tone was measured, steady, carrying the weight of royal responsibility and the sincerity of the cause. Every word, every pause, every nod had been planned meticulously, as if each syllable had been polished under a magnifying glass. He wanted to inspire, to connect, to show the world that despite the pressures of his role, he remained deeply committed to charity, to service, and to the mission he championed. Then, suddenly, Meghan was there. She moved in close, her presence undeniable, her energy radiating in ways that drew attention not just from Harry, but from the audience and the cameras trained on them. The touch was light at first, a hand brushing his arm, but the gesture carried weight far beyond its size. It was a signal, a claim of ownership, a demand for attention at the exact moment that Harry was supposed to be the center of focus. Observers later described the movement as both graceful and jarring, an elegant intrusion that immediately shifted the energy on stage. Harry froze momentarily, his eyes widening as he registered the contact. A flash of tension rippled through his posture. The poised, confident prince everyone had come to admire suddenly seemed constrained, caught between obligation, desire to remain polite, and a mounting irritation that had been quietly building throughout the evening. Meghan, seemingly oblivious or deliberately assertive, leaned in further, whispering something that only he could hear. A suggestion, a comment, a push, whatever the words were, they acted as a spark to the carefully contained pressure within him. The audience, thousands of people in a packed venue, could sense a shift. A subtle hush fell over the crowd. Cameras flashed, but their lenses could not capture the emotions bubbling just beneath the surface. Whispers traveled through the audience. Did you see that? What just happened? Is this part of the show? Some assumed it was playful, a light-hearted exchange between husband and wife. Others sensed something far more intense. And then it happened. Harry's patience broke. His voice, normally controlled and calm, rang out sharply across the stage. "Leave me alone." The words were unmistakable. The force behind them was undeniable. Gasps echoed through the audience. A few photographers captured the expression on Meghan's face, surprise, perhaps, but also a flicker of defiance. The moment was frozen in time, replayed in seconds and milliseconds across social media feeds around the world. Within minutes, the clip had gone viral, accompanied by headlines ranging from shocked admiration to harsh critique. But what led to this eruption? To understand it, we must examine the underlying dynamics. For months, insiders had noted patterns of behavior that indicated growing tension in Harry and Meghan's relationship. Meghan's presence, while celebrated publicly as supportive and glamorous, was described by aides and friends as increasingly overbearing, attention-seeking, and emotionally demanding. Harry, a man trained to maintain composure under pressure, had quietly accumulated these small irritations, often internalizing them to preserve appearances. The stage, with all its visibility, became the perfect crucible for an emotional release that had been brewing for weeks, if not months. What makes this moment so striking is not just the public nature of the outburst, but the contrast between intent and perception. Harry's intent was to maintain professionalism, to honor the charity, and to fulfill his duty. Meghan's intent, according to sources, may have been to support him, to be present, to be involved. Yet the method, the timing, and the intensity created an unavoidable collision. And in that collision, the world witnessed the human side of royalty, raw, vulnerable, and imperfect. Backstage, staff scrambled to contain the tension. Security subtly positioned themselves nearby, unsure whether to intervene directly or allow the moment to pass. Assistants whispered to each other, trying to anticipate the next move, aware that any misstep could escalate the situation further. Even the performers sensed the disruption, adjusting cues, waiting for the moment to resume normal flow. It was a ballet of tension behind the curtain, parallel to the drama unfolding in plain sight. The micro-interactions on stage were telling. Harry shifted slightly away from Meghan, a subtle but deliberate attempt to reclaim space. Meghan leaned closer, maintaining physical proximity, her gaze locked on him. Each gesture was loaded with meaning, a push and pull of emotional dominance, of assertion versus restraint. Observers with trained eyes described the exchange as almost theatrical, a real-life study in power dynamics, attachment, and human limits. Social media erupted almost instantly. Within minutes, clips circulated with captions like, "Prince Harry snaps on stage," "Royal feud in full view," and "Meghan oversteps again." The public debate was immediate and polarized. Some viewers sympathized with Harry, understanding the pressures of public life and private frustrations. Others questioned Meghan's behavior, critiquing her for appearing intrusive. Memes and GIFs multiplied, dissecting every gesture, expression, and syllable. But the truth, as is often the case, lies somewhere between public perception and private reality. Sources close to the couple later revealed that the tension had been building not just on that day, but for weeks leading up to it. Rehearsals had been fraught with interruptions, whispered disagreements, and small but cumulative acts that eroded Harry's patience. Meghan's desire to influence and direct, even subtly, clashed with his need to maintain focus and authority over the stage moment. The incident was inevitable, a powder keg waiting for the right spark. For Harry, the outburst was not merely about Meghan's physical gesture. It represented a breaking point, a culmination of stress, responsibility, and personal boundaries that had been tested repeatedly. He had long navigated the complexities of public scrutiny, relentless media attention, family expectations, and personal pressures with grace and composure. But this was different. This was immediate, personal, and inescapable. It demanded a reaction, and for once, he allowed the world to witness it. Meghan's response, while less documented in public footage, was equally significant. Sources describe a brief moment of shock, followed by what some interpreted as defiance. Her presence, in her mind perhaps supportive or affectionate, had been perceived as invasive by Harry. In the charged atmosphere of the stage, under thousands of eyes, intentions became blurred, and the emotional stakes magnified exponentially. The audience's reaction was equally complex. Some leaned forward, enthralled by the unscripted drama. Others were shocked, unsure whether to interpret the outburst as anger, stress, or marital tension spilling into public view. Social media amplified these reactions, and within hours, millions had watched, commented, and speculated. What happens when a private moment explodes into the public eye? When a carefully curated image shatters in seconds, leaving millions to interpret, judge, and dissect every nuance. That's exactly what happened after Prince Harry's now infamous outburst. leave me alone. During the charity concert, the stage incident, while shocking in itself, was only the catalyst for a media storm that would sweep across the globe, redefining public perception of Harry and Meghan in ways few could have predicted. Within minutes of the outburst, social media lit up. Clips of the moment were uploaded, retweeted, and shared endlessly. Every gesture, expression, and inflection became fodder for analysis. Memes emerged almost immediately, some mocking the couple, some sympathizing with Harry, and others speculating about the tension in their marriage. Hashtags began trending. #HarrySnaps, #Meghan oversteps, #royal drama, and #charity concert chaos. Within hours, the world had collectively witnessed what many insiders had known. Tension had been simmering, and now it had boiled over. Public reaction was polarizing. Some viewers expressed shock and dismay, empathizing with Harry's apparent frustration. Comments flooded platforms. Even princes have limits. He finally spoke his mind. Imagine being under that kind of pressure and snapped in public. I get it. Sympathy for Harry was high among those who recognized the strain of constant scrutiny and the challenge of balancing personal boundaries with public duty. On the other hand, critics turned their gaze toward Meghan. Social media users dissected her gestures, her posture, and her proximity, framing her as overbearing, controlling, or even manipulative. Headlines screamed, "Meghan pushes Harry too far." Royal tensions exposed. Duchess sparks public meltdown. The narrative quickly became a battlefield of interpretation, with each side presenting a version of events that confirmed their preconceived notions about the couple. News outlets joined the frenzy, amplifying the viral clips and adding analysis that ranged from sympathetic to sensationalized. Pundits debated on live television, asking, was this a marital dispute, a public warning, or the breaking point of a prince under enormous stress? The media storm was relentless. Every camera angle was scrutinized, every microphone pickup replayed in slow motion, and every whisper interpreted as evidence of deeper issues. Even fan communities, who had long admired Harry and Meghan, were divided. Forums and comment sections became echo chambers of speculation. Some defended Meghan, arguing that her actions were supportive, her presence a reflection of engagement rather than intrusion. Others sided with Harry, suggesting that the moment revealed a pattern of tension and emotional strain that had been hidden behind public appearances. The debate was intense, emotional, and utterly global, spanning continents and cultures. Meanwhile, the incident inspired a flood of expert commentary. Psychologists weighed in, analyzing body language, tone of voice, and nonverbal cues. One expert noted, Harry's outburst is a classic example of accumulated stress reaching a tipping point. His reaction is both human and understandable under the circumstances. Another analyst emphasized the relational dynamics, stating, this is less about one incident and more about repeated boundary testing in a high-pressure environment. Public moments often reveal private tensions. Royal commentators were equally active. Some framed the incident as a historic breach of royal decorum, suggesting that the image of composure, duty, and control had been irrevocably altered. Others highlighted the human side, portraying Harry as a man under relentless scrutiny, forced to navigate love, expectation, and public image simultaneously. Every analysis, every tweet, and every news segment served to magnify the intensity of the event, ensuring that the story would dominate headlines for days to come. Social media influencers and celebrities joined in, sharing their opinions and interpretations. Some posts leaned humorous, turning the incident into viral memes that spread rapidly. Others expressed concern, emphasizing the emotional pressures faced by public figures in the modern media landscape. The incident became more than a royal event. It became a cultural phenomenon, a moment that sparked discussions about boundaries, marriage, mental health, and the human side of public life. But the public reaction didn't stop online. Traditional media outlets quickly picked up the story, sending journalists to interview attendees, concert staff, and royal experts. First-hand accounts added depth. Some recalled the shock of hearing Harry's voice cut sharply through the auditorium. Others described the subtle shift in Meghan's expression, the fleeting mix of surprise, defiance, and composure. Each perspective added layers to the narrative, creating a multidimensional picture of the evening that the audience at home could now interpret through their own lens. The reaction also spilled into political commentary. Columnists debated the broader implications of the incident, asking whether it reflected deeper issues within the monarchy or within Harry and Meghan's approach to public life. Was this a symptom of stress, emotional imbalance, or an inevitable clash between personal autonomy and institutional expectation? Opinion pieces proliferated, each with its own framing, shaping the global conversation and ensuring that the incident would not be forgotten quickly. And then there were the fans who sought deeper context, analyzing previous appearances, interviews, and public engagements. They began to identify patterns, moments where tension may have been brewing behind the smiles and perfectly curated images. Every handshake, glance, and gesture from past events was now being reinterpreted in light of the charity concert incident. It became a global investigation, with amateur sleuths piecing together a narrative that blended public appearances with private dynamics. Meanwhile, the couple themselves faced immediate consequences. Staff reports indicate that security became hypervigilant, monitoring interactions closely to prevent further escalations. Harry, reportedly frustrated and exhausted, was advised to take a private moment to recover his composure. Meghan, on the other hand, was guided by aid to maintain poise and avoid further public tension. Every step taken in those moments would influence not only public perception, but also the ongoing dynamics between them, highlighting the delicate balance of public performance and private emotion. Despite the media frenzy, a larger truth began to emerge. The incident was more than a viral moment or headline-grabbing clip. It was a window into the emotional realities of a couple living under extreme scrutiny, a glimpse of human vulnerability in a world that expects perfection. The global reaction, laughter, shock, analysis, and judgment, underscored how rare and fascinating it is for private tension to be made public, and how quickly a single moment can define narratives for millions. And yet, for all the viral clips, memes, and commentary, much remained unseen. Behind the screens, beyond the cameras, the private conversations continued. Harry and Meghan were left to navigate the fallout, balancing the demands of public appearances, personal emotions, and the relentless scrutiny of a global audience. The story was far from over. What happens when a private moment explodes into the most scrutinized institution in the world, the British royal family? Prince Harry's public outburst at the charity concert wasn't just a viral sensation. It sent shockwaves through the palace, leaving advisors, family members, and royal aides scrambling to contain the fallout. The monarchy thrives on image, tradition, and carefully controlled narratives, and suddenly, one short, sharp phrase, "Leave me alone," threatened to unravel months of meticulous public relations planning. Immediately after the incident, palace communications were activated. Advisors convened in a flurry of urgency, analyzing clips, transcripts, and social media commentary. Every camera angle, every snippet of dialogue, and every expression was dissected. They had to understand what had happened, how it would be perceived, and how to respond without inflaming the situation further. Royal experts later noted that the speed and intensity of the reaction were unprecedented. Never before had a single phrase, delivered in a moment of marital tension, created such immediate global scrutiny. Inside the royal household, whispers traveled fast. Courtiers debated what it meant for Harry's reputation, Meghan's public persona, and the family's broader image. One senior aide described the atmosphere as tense, almost electric, with staff moving quickly to assess whether the incident signaled deeper marital instability or was simply an isolated outburst fueled by stress. It was a delicate calculation. Too much acknowledgement would magnify the drama, too little risked public speculation spiraling out of control. Sources suggest that the immediate reaction from senior family members was a mix of concern, disbelief, and strategic calculation. Queen Elizabeth II, known for her measured composure, reportedly sought to understand the context before commenting. King Charles, on the other hand, was said to be frustrated by the breach of decorum, his concern not only personal but institutional, aware that any public tension between Harry and Meghan could be interpreted as a threat to the monarchy's carefully managed image. The reaction wasn't confined to family alone. Royal aides, security personnel, and PR teams all faced enormous pressure to navigate the situation. Staff had to anticipate media narratives, contain potential public backlash, and support Harry and Meghan, all while preserving the illusion of unity and control. Behind closed doors, meetings stretched late into the evening, with advisors reviewing footage frame by frame, crafting talking points, and simulating potential scenarios for interviews and public statements. Meanwhile, rumors began to circulate within royal circles. Some courtiers privately expressed concerns that Meghan's behavior, while often praised for charm and engagement, had crossed lines that created tension with Harry. Others argued that Harry, under relentless scrutiny and burdened with personal responsibilities, had reached a breaking point that would inevitably result in such an outburst. Both perspectives, though differing in tone, agreed on one thing. The incident could no longer be treated as trivial. It demanded careful management. The palace communications team quickly realized that ignoring the story was not an option. Social media had already exploded, and traditional media outlets were sending correspondents to cover every angle. The viral clip had become a global talking point, and the narrative was beginning to shape itself in ways that could not be entirely controlled. Senior aides drafted potential statements, rehearsed responses for interviews, and even considered private conversations with journalists to mitigate damaging speculation. Every move had to be calculated, balancing transparency with discretion, honesty with diplomacy. Meanwhile, family members faced their own dilemmas. How do you address a very human conflict while maintaining the dignity of centuries of tradition? How do you protect Harry, who was visibly frustrated but also a senior member of the royal family, without alienating Meghan, whose public persona had been carefully cultivated? These were questions with no easy answers, forcing royal insiders to navigate a labyrinth of emotion, expectation, and media scrutiny. Interestingly, the fallout also revealed the stark contrast between public and private perception. Publicly, the monarchy projected calm, unity, and grace. Privately, advisors described a scene of tension, anxiety, and intense discussion about the implications for upcoming events, media coverage, and international perception. One insider noted, "For the public, it's a single outburst. For us, it's a ripple that touches every part of the family, every protocol, and every future engagement." The incident also reignited debates about Meghan's integration into the royal family. Some aides reportedly viewed her actions as overstepping, while others highlighted her unique challenges as an American entering centuries of protocol. It became clear that the charity concert incident was not an isolated moment of tension, but rather a flashpoint reflecting ongoing pressures, cultural differences, and differing expectations within the family dynamic. Political implications, too, began to surface. While the monarchy is traditionally apolitical, public and media interpretation often strays into the political arena. Opinion pieces emerge questioning whether the incident symbolized broader shifts in royal influence, autonomy, and modernity. Discussions about boundaries, individual agency, and the pressures of public life in the royal context began to dominate both social commentary and international media coverage. In the immediate days following the concert, Harry reportedly retreated into private meetings with advisors and confidants. Meghan, similarly, engaged in discussions with her own team, weighing media strategy and public messaging. Both were navigating the delicate task of controlling narrative while managing personal emotion, a challenge that few in the world could truly comprehend. Every statement, every photo opportunity, and every appearance became part of an intricate dance designed to mitigate damage and maintain dignity. Yet, despite the careful orchestration, whispers of discontent within royal circles persisted. Insiders noted subtle signs of friction, quiet conversations about protocol, hushed disagreements over media strategy, and nuanced debates over the couple's future engagements. It was a reminder that public perception and private reality often exist in parallel, each influencing the other in unpredictable ways. And as the media continued to amplify the story, the palace realized one undeniable truth. The charity concert outburst was not going away. It had become a defining moment, not just for Harry and Meghan, but for the monarchy itself. Headlines framed it as a human moment, a breach of protocol, a glimpse into private struggle. Interpretations varied, but all agreed on one thing. The world was watching, and the consequences would unfold over weeks, months, and perhaps years. And what came next would not only influence the royal family's internal dynamics, but also shape the global narrative surrounding Harry and Meghan, their relationship, and their roles as public figures in one of the most scrutinized institutions in the world. The stage was set for confrontation, reflection, and decisions that would reverberate far beyond the charity concert, and the world would soon learn that the fallout was only just beginning. The moment Harry yelled, "Leave me alone," on stage, the world didn't just gasp, it exploded. Within minutes, the clip had gone viral, shared across every conceivable platform: Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, even WhatsApp groups buzzing with commentary. Social media algorithms latched onto the drama like bees to honey, propelling the moment into millions of feeds worldwide. The charity concert, meant to uplift and inspire, had inadvertently become the epicenter of a global media frenzy. Newsrooms fired up, live broadcasts cut into regular programming, and editors scrambled to cover the story. Headlines ranged from neutral reporting, Prince Harry shouts at Meghan during concert, to sensationalist interpretations, royal marriage in crisis, Meghan pushes Harry to breaking point. Within hours, analysts, journalists, and commentators were dissecting every frame of the video, debating what Harry's words meant, why Meghan had touched him, and how this reflected on their marriage. But the frenzy didn't stop with traditional media. Social media influencers and content creators fueled the fire, creating compilations, GIFs, and reaction videos. One viral TikTok spliced Harry's outburst with dramatic music, while another meme juxtaposed Meghan's gestures with captions mocking her clingy behavior. Comments sections were flooded with polarized opinions. Some users sympathized with Harry. Finally, he stood up for himself. Others criticized Meghan. She just can't help but insert herself. Entire threads spiraled into heated debates about relationships, boundaries, and modern royalty. This global speculation created a feedback loop. Every social media reaction was covered by news outlets, and every news report was subsequently dissected online. Analysts were suddenly inundated with questions. Was this a private marital spat or indicative of deeper issues? Was Harry justified in his frustration? Had Meghan misjudged the moment? Or was she simply being supportive in a way that didn't resonate? No single answer could satisfy the global audience, and the ambiguity fueled endless discussion. Royal experts weighed in, offering nuanced perspectives that blended historical context with psychological analysis. One commentator noted, "The monarchy has always relied on the image of unity and control. When a private emotional moment like this becomes public, it challenges centuries of tradition." Another added, "Harry's reaction was human. For a man constantly under scrutiny, even small intrusions can feel magnified." Meghan's gesture, while likely well-intentioned, became symbolic of boundary crossing in a highly charged environment. The international media picked up the story, framing it according to local sensibilities. British tabloids portrayed the incident as a breach of decorum, focusing on tradition and protocol. American outlets leaned into the human drama, emphasizing Harry's frustration and Meghan's emotional intensity. Global news cycles framed the event differently, creating a kaleidoscope of interpretations that reinforced the narrative of marital tension, public scrutiny, and human vulnerability under pressure. Even lifestyle and entertainment publications weighed in, analyzing Meghan's wardrobe choice, body language, and facial expressions. Headlines like "Duchess Meghan oversteps on stage" and "Prince Harry snaps a charity event" saturated feeds. Every detail, from the tilt of her head to the placement of her hand, became subject to scrutiny, highlighting how, in the age of instant media, even the subtlest gestures can become global symbols. Social scientists began weighing in as well. Psychologists highlighted the stress of public life, constant surveillance, relentless media pressure, and the difficulty of maintaining private boundaries. When every interaction is under the microscope, one expert explained, it's no surprise that emotions can erupt publicly. Harry's outburst was a manifestation of sustained pressure, compounded by personal relationship dynamics. Sociologists analyzed the broader cultural implications, questioning how audiences interpret public displays of vulnerability and emotional conflict in figures who are expected to maintain composure. Meanwhile, public speculation took a more conspiratorial turn. Rumors and insider sources filled tabloid columns, claiming knowledge of behind-the-scenes arguments, long-standing marital strain, or even orchestrated media stunts. While many of these reports were unverified, they amplified the frenzy, turning a momentary lapse of patience into a sprawling narrative of conflict, intrigue, and alleged manipulation. Every rumor, whether true or false, further entrenched the event in global consciousness. The media frenzy also sparked debates about mental health, boundaries, and gender dynamics. Some argued that Harry's outburst highlighted the challenges men face when expressing emotion publicly, particularly under societal expectations of stoicism. Others focused on Meghan, discussing the pressures placed on women in high-profile relationships to manage appearances, support partners, and maintain charm, often simultaneously. Comment sections and panels exploded with discussions about empathy, personal responsibility, and the human side of royalty. Interestingly, the frenzy had unintended consequences. It provided a platform for people worldwide to reflect on their own relationships. Discussion forums saw threads like boundaries in marriage and handling public stress, where individuals shared personal experiences inspired by the royal moment. The event became more than a celebrity spectacle. It was a lens for examining universal themes of frustration, love, and the clash between personal needs and public expectations. Yet the global speculation also created pressure on the couple themselves. Advisors warned Harry and Meghan that every public appearance following the incident would be dissected, that any misstep could feed the narrative of marital instability. Their team scrambled to craft a strategy, maintain dignity, project unity, and carefully manage future engagements. Every smile, gesture, or word would now carry layers of meaning, magnified by millions of eyes. And all the while, the incident continued to dominate media cycles. Each day brought new angles, expert analysis, social media commentary, fan reactions, and speculations about the couple's private life. The initial stage incident had become a living story, evolving in real time, and capturing attention across time zones, cultures, and platforms. The world was watching, talking, and theorizing, and the story was far from over. Because behind the media frenzy and viral clips, the real consequences were quietly taking shape. Private conversations within the royal household, strategy meetings with advisors, and emotionally charged discussions between Harry and Meghan were building towards something even bigger. The stage drama, now magnified by global speculation, was merely the opening act. What came next would reveal how public pressure and private tension could collide in ways that no one, not even the palace, had anticipated. And the most shocking revelations, the ones that would reshape the global understanding of Harry and Meghan's relationship, were still lurking just out of view, waiting to surface. What happens when the walls of privacy crumble and intimate conversations become public fodder? The charity concert incident didn't just explode on stage. It set off a chain reaction that revealed private exchanges between Harry and Meghan, exposing raw emotion, vulnerability, and unfiltered frustration to a world eager for insight. In the aftermath of the viral outburst, insiders began leaking details of conversations that had taken place backstage, capturing the tension, the arguments, and the complex dynamics that had been simmering long before the microphone picked up Harry's voice. Backstage, immediately after the incident, Harry reportedly pulled Meghan aside, seeking a private moment to regain composure. Witnesses described the atmosphere as thick with emotion, heavy, charged, and fragile. Harry's voice, though quieter than the stage, was tense, edged with exasperation. "I can't keep doing this in front of everyone," he reportedly said, his words laced with fatigue and frustration. Meghan, equally emotional, responded with a mixture of defensiveness and urgency, trying to justify her actions while maintaining poise under scrutiny. Their conversation, normally hidden behind the curtain of protocol, became the first glimpse into the private storm. Insiders later revealed that the dialogue was a mix of tension and attempts at reconciliation. Harry expressed feelings of being overwhelmed, of being constantly pushed beyond personal limits, and of the emotional toll of performing not just as a public figure, but as a husband under unrelenting pressure. Meghan, in turn, voiced her desire for involvement, for influence over public appearances, and for engagement that, in her perspective, was meant to support rather than frustrate. The collision of perspectives, raw and unfiltered, illuminated the emotional complexity behind what the audience had only seen as a brief, shocking outburst. One aide, who spoke under the condition of anonymity, described the scene. They were talking quickly, quietly, but every word had weight. You could feel the history of months of tension in that conversation. It wasn't just tonight. It was a culmination of stress, expectation, and emotion. The details suggest that the charity concert incident was less a sudden eruption and more a tipping point, the result of accumulated strain that had been building behind the smiles and public appearances. The content of these private conversations, once leaked, became viral in their own right. Media outlets reported exchanges where Harry reportedly implored Meghan to respect his personal space during public engagements. Meghan allegedly pushed back, emphasizing the importance of optics, messaging, and the couple's shared responsibility to appear unified. These leaked dialogues were dissected frame by frame, word by word, fueling global speculation about the power dynamics in their marriage. And then came the contradictions, the moments that fascinated and shocked observers. One source suggested that despite Harry's frustration, he also expressed understanding and compassion, recognizing the pressures Meghan faced in adapting to royal life and media scrutiny. Meghan, despite the perceived overreach, reportedly acknowledged Harry's emotional limits, promising to be more mindful in the future. These nuanced exchanges painted a complex picture, two individuals struggling to balance personal needs, public expectation, and relational loyalty in an environment few could fully comprehend. But the leaks didn't stop at backstage conversations. Phone calls, text messages, and private emails began surfacing, each one dissected by media and public alike. Reports described messages where Harry expressed exhaustion, guilt, and emotional strain. Meghan's responses, according to leaked accounts, oscillated between reassurance, strategic planning, and occasional frustration, revealing the multifaceted pressures of living life under constant observation. The private dialogue, now public, offered unprecedented insight into the human side of royalty, raw, flawed, and deeply relatable. The global audience was captivated. Social media erupted with debates. Was Harry justified in his outburst? Was Meghan overstepping boundaries, or was she attempting to support her husband in a way that backfired? Analysts highlighted the psychological and relational complexities, emphasizing that high-pressure environments amplify normal marital tensions, turning small conflicts into headline-making drama. Fans and critics alike sifted through every detail, searching for patterns, motives, and signs of long-term issues. Meanwhile, royal advisors scrambled to manage the fallout. The leak of private conversations posed a serious challenge. The palace had to protect the family's image while addressing the reality of public scrutiny. PR teams worked around the clock, coordinating statements, guiding social media narratives, and preparing for interviews that could further clarify or complicate matters. Every leaked message was analyzed, every interpretation weighed, and every potential public reaction predicted. The stakes were enormous. And then there was the human element. Observers noted the emotional toll on both Harry and Meghan. Living under constant surveillance, every private conversation now at risk of public exposure created intense stress. Psychologists suggested that such environments exacerbate existing tensions, making emotional regulation more difficult and increasing the likelihood of public outbursts. The charity concert incident, coupled with the subsequent leaks, demonstrated how thin the line can be between private vulnerability and public spectacle. Interestingly, The leaks also revealed moments of tenderness and mutual concern. Despite the tension, both Harry and Meghan reportedly expressed care for each other's well-being, acknowledging the challenges of their unique lives. These glimpses of empathy complicated the narrative, challenging the one-dimensional portrayals of either party as villain or victim. It became clear that the reality was far more intricate than any headline could capture, a dance of emotion, expectation, and human complexity playing out under the world's gaze. Yet, as the private conversations became public, a new wave of scrutiny emerged. Media outlets, eager for exclusive angles, began tracking the couple's interactions at subsequent events, looking for evidence of lingering tension or signs of reconciliation. Every handshake, every glance, every pause in conversation was analyzed, feeding speculation that the backstage drama was far from resolved. Social media commentary oscillated between sympathy and criticism, each post amplifying the pressure and reinforcing the narrative that the couple's relationship was under unprecedented strain. And just when it seemed the leaks had revealed everything, deeper layers emerged. Insiders hinted at more sensitive conversations, discussions about future engagements, family dynamics, and personal boundaries, all of which were closely guarded until selectively released. These revelations promised to further illuminate the emotional and relational complexities at play, keeping the public riveted and the media engaged. Because the truth is, when private conversations are exposed on a global stage, they do more than just satisfy curiosity. They redefine public perception, shape media narratives, and create lasting impressions of character, emotion, and intent. For Harry and Meghan, the leaked D. What happens when personal boundaries are crossed in the brightest spotlight imaginable? When the world expects decorum, poise, and control, and suddenly, raw emotion erupts. That's exactly what happened the moment Meghan Markle stepped closer to Prince Harry on stage during the charity concert. A moment that would instantly become the defining image of the evening, shared across millions of screens worldwide. Harry had just begun his carefully rehearsed speech. His tone was measured, steady, carrying the weight of royal responsibility and the sincerity of the cause. Every word, every pause, every nod had been planned meticulously, as if each syllable had been polished under a magnifying glass. He wanted to inspire, to connect, to show the world that despite the pressures of his role, he remained deeply committed to charity, to service, and to the mission he championed. Then, suddenly, Meghan was there. She moved in close, her presence undeniable, her energy radiating in ways that drew attention not just from Harry, but from the audience and the cameras trained on them. The touch was light at first, a hand brushing his arm, but the gesture carried weight far beyond its size. It was a signal, a claim of ownership, a demand for attention at the exact moment that Harry was supposed to be the center of focus. Observers later described the movement as both graceful and jarring, an elegant intrusion that immediately shifted the energy on stage. Harry froze momentarily, his eyes widening as he registered the contact. A flash of tension rippled through his posture. The poised, confident prince everyone had come to admire suddenly seemed constrained, caught between obligation, desire to remain polite, and a mounting irritation that had been quietly building throughout the evening. Meghan, seemingly oblivious or deliberately assertive, leaned in further, whispering something that only he could hear. A suggestion, a comment, a push, whatever the words were, they acted as a spark to the carefully contained pressure within him. The audience, thousands of people in a packed venue, could sense a shift. A subtle hush fell over the crowd. Cameras flashed, but their lenses could not capture the emotions bubbling just beneath the surface. Whispers traveled through the audience. Did you see that? What just happened? Is this part of the show? Some assumed it was playful, a light-hearted exchange between husband and wife. Others sensed something far more intense. And then it happened. Harry's patience broke. His voice, normally controlled and calm, rang out sharply across the stage. "Leave me alone." The words were unmistakable. The force behind them was undeniable. Gasps echoed through the audience. A few photographers captured the expression on Meghan's face, surprise, perhaps, but also a flicker of defiance. The moment was frozen in time, replayed in seconds and milliseconds across social media feeds around the world. Within minutes, the clip had gone viral, accompanied by headlines ranging from shocked admiration to harsh critique. But what led to this eruption? To understand it, we must examine the underlying dynamics. For months, insiders had noted patterns of behavior that indicated growing tension in Harry and Meghan's relationship. Meghan's presence, while celebrated publicly as supportive and glamorous, was described by aides and friends as increasingly overbearing, attention-seeking, and emotionally demanding. Harry, a man trained to maintain composure under pressure, had quietly accumulated these small irritations, often internalizing them to preserve appearances. The stage, with all its visibility, became the perfect crucible for an emotional release that had been brewing for weeks, if not months. What makes this moment so striking is not just the public nature of the outburst, but the contrast between intent and perception. Harry's intent was to maintain professionalism, to honor the charity, and to fulfill his duty. Meghan's intent, according to sources, may have been to support him, to be present, to be involved. Yet the method, the timing, and the intensity created an unavoidable collision. And in that collision, the world witnessed the human side of royalty, raw, vulnerable, and imperfect. Backstage, staff scrambled to contain the tension. Security subtly positioned themselves nearby, unsure whether to intervene directly or allow the moment to pass. Assistants whispered to each other, trying to anticipate the next move, aware that any misstep could escalate the situation further. Even the performers sensed the disruption, adjusting cues, waiting for the moment to resume normal flow. It was a ballet of tension behind the curtain, parallel to the drama unfolding in plain sight. The micro-interactions on stage were telling. Harry shifted slightly away from Meghan, a subtle but deliberate attempt to reclaim space. Meghan leaned closer, maintaining physical proximity, her gaze locked on him. Each gesture was loaded with meaning, a push and pull of emotional dominance, of assertion versus restraint. Observers with trained eyes described the exchange as almost theatrical, a real-life study in power dynamics, attachment, and human limits. Social media erupted almost instantly. Within minutes, clips circulated with captions like, "Prince Harry snaps on stage," "Royal feud in full view," and "Meghan oversteps again." The public debate was immediate and polarized. Some viewers sympathized with Harry, understanding the pressures of public life and private frustrations. Others questioned Meghan's behavior, critiquing her for appearing intrusive. Memes and GIFs multiplied, dissecting every gesture, expression, and syllable. But the truth, as is often the case, lies somewhere between public perception and private reality. Sources close to the couple later revealed that the tension had been building not just on that day, but for weeks leading up to it. Rehearsals had been fraught with interruptions, whispered disagreements, and small but cumulative acts that eroded Harry's patience. Meghan's desire to influence and direct, even subtly, clashed with his need to maintain focus and authority over the stage moment. The incident was inevitable, a powder keg waiting for the right spark. For Harry, the outburst was not merely about Meghan's physical gesture. It represented a breaking point, a culmination of stress, responsibility, and personal boundaries that had been tested repeatedly. He had long navigated the complexities of public scrutiny, relentless media attention, family expectations, and personal pressures with grace and composure. But this was different. This was immediate, personal, and inescapable. It demanded a reaction, and for once, he allowed the world to witness it. Meghan's response, while less documented in public footage, was equally significant. Sources describe a brief moment of shock, followed by what some interpreted as defiance. Her